What's that? No! I've recently only been checking out game series from Mandalore's channel, so I figured I might as well take a bit of a break from those and do some of these one-off videos. I have never heard of this game and know absolutely nothing about what this game is about, but I did receive a recommendation from one of our patrons to check this one out, so here I am. If there are any one-off reviews that you guys think I would enjoy watching, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below. Fair warning, avoid using any links in your comments because YouTube will automatically delete it. Just let me know the title of the game and I'll check it out whenever I can. But alrighty, this is a reaction video, so please make sure to do your due diligence and support the OG. The link to that is at the very top of the description, as always. Hi? What in the... Is this a horror game? Yeah, get out of the... What was that? Oh, jeez.
Northern Journey is described by its developers as being a Norwegian happy sad game. At first I thought this might be a joke term, like from the same hole that Hope Punk slithered out of, but this really is how the dev describes his game, and it's accurate. Northern Journey has fantastic, inspiring sights to show you, and some nightmares along the way. It's also all from the mind of a true solo developer, and in the credits, he thanks his friends and family. And this isn't a half-hour jog, it's a proper journey complete with combat, puzzles, and everything else.
That's actually awesome. It certainly has been a while since we checked out an indie-developed game, but for the most part, whenever it is indie-developed, there aren't any of the corporate executives telling you to do this and predatory practices within your video game. So it's just refreshing to see. And these games are very much a passion project, so you see some really cool ideas go into them. I am not very familiar with European culture in general, so I don't know how much of this is going to go over my head, but we'll see.
Considering that, the ambition and scale of it all is insane. It still has many signs of being a solo project, but it gets so much right and comes with an incredible atmosphere. I don't want to spoil too much of the journey, and luckily, the story is very straightforward. You're traveling through misty fjords to lands unknown, and you've become lost. It's going alright until some kind of mystical Chris Kyle punches holes in your boats from the cliffside. You barely make it to shore before sinking and are now trapped in wherever this is. After a short walk, you meet a traveling flute player who finds it extremely convenient you're now trapped here. They'll help you escape if you retrieve some lost items. You can search the nearby village for clues, and this is the first taste of how things will be. The first person you meet is a creepy village idiot who's tied up some kind of worm monster that the sheriff's dog is trying to kill. And if you go to the sheriff, he's preoccupied with the actual demon in his little jail cell. I think it's safe to say there's something off and strange about everyone in town.
What is going on here? I don't want to be here, but also we kind of got stranded here, so I guess we have no choice. But yeah, as Mandalore said, the scenery around here is certainly beautiful for an indie-developed game. I wonder what engine they used, because a lot of these assets make me think Unity, because there was a time when I was super into game development, as I'm sure a lot of you were during your teens, and just the way the landscape is shaped and the way the trees look definitely remind me of Unity.
The conversations are one-sided, so it's not nearly as in-depth, but it does remind me of Pathologic. It definitely feels in that
because the UI too, and just the way the text was displayed for the conversations, and you wandering around this weird place that you don't really want to be in, but you kind of have to be there. Considering that the developer said that it was a happy, sad game though, what do you extrapolate from that? Where are we going exactly with this game's story? What is the point of the game? We do have all the bells and whistles like combat, have a bit of exploration, we seem to have some sort of mystery potentially going on here. And why are we retrieving the items for this mysterious traveling flute player? Are they good? Or are they bad? I don't know. Lots of questions. Hopefully we get some answers, but it might be one of those games where it never really gives you an answer. It more so gives you an experience that you remember.
Neighborhood graphically and surreally. And there is that sense there's an order to things here you can't understand. But unlike Pathologic, you're not here to fully figure out the town, you're just passing through. That means it's never answered whether or not the burrowing goblins are citizens, but I'm gonna lean on no. You will need to come back to town a few times, and can always stop back for a reliable heal. But your main goal is to venture north, collect all the flute player's missing items, and be on your way.
Northern Journey.
You'll get lost sometimes, but the fun kind where you're not too bamboozled. The flute player's messengers show up often enough, and you sometimes get a personal visit.
Is he like, is it the Pied Piper? Is that what he's called? I don't know much about that story, actually. I wonder where it originated from, but ever since then, whenever you see somebody playing a flute, it's never usually a good thing.
It's as simple as that, so we're good to talk about the visuals. Graphically, it is on the low end, especially when it comes to things like character models. It is strange at first when a human being looks like some kind of bug-eyed skinwalker, but it does give it unique, surreal art direction that I think does add to the overall experience. Having beaten it, it's not the kind of thing where I wish they had realistic-looking characters. I usually don't think about that kind of thing, but I do here because the environments are so gorgeous.
That's actually a really good point, because you have this really big difference between the character models and the way the environment looks, which maybe there's a part there where it's like character models are just much more difficult to work with and make look realistic, whereas landscapes have pretty much been figured out, but it may also simply be a artistic choice for whatever the story is currently about, or whatever message the game is trying to say.
It gave me the same feeling as playing Morrowind or Shadow of the Colossus for the first time.
Dude, I kind of want to play Shadow of the Colossus. I've heard so many good things about it, and I somewhat know what the ending is like, but even then, I think the experience of playing it myself would still be valuable.
Where you're in this strange, foggy world full of secrets. Though the draw distance is certainly better than Morrowind. I try not to talk about game engines often, because generally in YouTube game reviews, the term "the engine" could be replaced with "the evil spirits" and be just about as accurate. That said, playing the game and especially looking at the settings menu, I would not have guessed this is Unreal 4. It's
What? What? Oh, damn. I find it funny. I usually never talk about like what game engine the game was developed in. Here for some reason I did, but yeah, I was expecting Unity. That was not even close. I do recall messing around with Unreal Engine 4 before, and yeah, you have to do quite a lot to get the game to look exactly like this. There's just this style that every game engine has, and you can pretty much tell what a game was made in if the developer didn't really make a lot of personal changes to all the assets. Like anybody who's tried to make a game in Unreal Engine, in the Cry engine, in Unity, we'll see the signs. But I wonder why we chose Unreal Engine 4 for this project. Maybe it's just what the developer is used to.
Low fidelity, but doesn't come across as trying to emulate a retro game and failing at it. There are no clashing assets from the marketplace, or just those kinds of hiccups you'd see in a small Unreal game like this. Northern Journey feels like a fully realized world and is good at conveying a lot with very little at times. However, it will use the power it has to give you an incredible sense of scale. Sometimes it is faraway scenery you can never touch, but you can still touch a good amount of it. Looking around wherever you see a rope or a bridge is somewhere you can get to. It's when you unlock the zipline for the ropes that you can really appreciate just how much ground you're covering.
That's kind of insane for a solo developed project. Like, if nowadays I was still into making games myself, and I was trying to come up with an idea for a solo project, I certainly wouldn't be thinking of, like, this sort of exploration thing. I'd be more thinking into more linear 2D games. I feel like that might be a bit easier to pull off.
So much of what you see is explorable, and it does give you that great sense of discovery. For the most part, these aren't winding mazes of confusion either, but very well thought out levels. You're not let fully off the leash to wander over every hill and get lost and frustrated, but it's still open and branched out enough that it gives you a lot to find. It's so clearly made by someone who loves hiking and exploring, and it's nice to talk about a game like that. I get the sense that this is a man who loves—
Oh god, also what was going on with that cow? Was that a cow or is that a goat? There seemed to be like massive ticks, parasites, sucking the life out of it, maybe even controlling it? Is there some sort of disease? Or maybe aliens? We did see some weird statues earlier. Actually, wait, never mind. We literally saw a demonic creature in a jail cell, so it could be anything at this point. I do think it's very important, however, to be somebody who's actually passionate about these things, because it certainly comes across in whatever content that you create. Just by playing the game, Mandalore can feel that this guy is really into hiking and he loves the outdoors. Or for example, if say you watch a reaction video from somebody who isn't really into doing it, but they're kind of just doing it for the sake of doing it, you can tell as a viewer, like, they're just there to do their job and get money. But when you find a reactor who's either like super new and wanting to learn, or just really passionate and super into something, and they're watching their favorite content that they really enjoy, you can tell. Like, it comes out through so many different things. Their voice, their demeanor, the way they speak. A lot of these signs you can pick up on. Which is why I feel like, regardless of what you're doing, make sure that you're doing something that you're passionate about. Well, at least when it comes to content creation. I know a lot of us are stuck with 9-to-5 jobs that we don't really enjoy, and we're just doing to pay the bills. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're not allowed to pursue the things that you enjoy.
A game like that. I get the sense that this is a man who loves nature, but probably despises insects. No, I could be projecting there because you do face down a lot of bugs. Like a Clondaphia amount of bugs. And don't get me started on the spiders.
Wait, what was that game? Zero Troopers Killed in Action? Oh, it's probably Starship Troopers, right? Was that what the movie was named? I actually really enjoyed it. And I know that there's a video game out there, but a lot of people were comparing Helldivers 2 to Starship Troopers. And we all knew how big Helldivers got and then sort of died out from their own decisions. But I didn't really hear much about the Starship Troopers game.
And don't get me started on the spiders. This might cure arachnophobia by sheer exposure to spiders. Not just one kind either, but every spider. There are so many. It's to a level that the game actually makes a point of saying from this point forward there will be no more living or air-breathing spiders. After you pass the valley of hybrid troll spider demons.
What the frick is going on here? I'm so glad that I got over my arachnophobia, and I'm also really glad that I'm not reacting to this video with Serpy, who immensely dislikes spiders. Although, funnily enough, one of their favorite shows, or I guess I should say series, because it's originally a light novel, is So I'm a Spider, So What? But the spider part is the thing that they dislike the most.
Then the deal is set in stone. Of course.
Oh my.
Even in that example, fighting the same general kind of enemy does not feel repetitive. The spiders aren't a color swap, they have different models that can move and fight very differently.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah. Well, it does give the impression of somebody who dislikes insects. All of the insect designs are pretty unique, so they must have done some extensive research on them, right? Either that or they cooked up the most horrific things they could think of from their nightmares and put it into a video game.
There are over 50 different enemy types in the game, and some you only encounter briefly. But
what the 50? You don't even see that kind of variety in some AAA games.
Great amount of effort was put into making them visually distinct, even if they are in the same category of flying insect or something like that. A decent amount of them will use camouflage and ambush tactics as well, so look forward to that.
Oh my god, this makes me think of the freaking jaguars or cheetahs, whatever they were, in the trees in the hunting game. I forget its name, but you're a conservationist, yes? That game.
As you might expect, the game draws a lot from Nordic folklore as well. You might be familiar with the names of some creatures, but how they get portrayed in game can be pretty wild.
I'm not
familiar at all. Even if you do just fight something more traditional, Northern Journey keeps things refreshing enough that I wanted to keep going. The scenery could change in all kinds of directions, and for most of the game, I had the sense that I never knew what was around any corner. The environments are already captivating, and you want to give you an extra layer in connecting with it. You interact with the world with your hands, and they're just kind of floating there like a VR game. This felt weird at first, but melted away over time. I felt pulled into the game enough that that kind of missing realism didn't feel like it mattered a lot. If anything, I really liked seeing that extra level of interaction. Sure, out of context.
I don't think you would see this kind of level of interaction in any other indie game. It would be so much easier to simply just press button and then have the thing appear in your hand. No need to go and animate these floating hands in order to make it feel like you're there. But the extra layer of detail is appreciated.
So it looks like it must be a VR game or Nordic Rayman, but it's shocking just how much this works in the context of the game. So visually it has grand scale, mystery, and interesting art direction. However, what brings the atmosphere to the next level is the game's sound design, and especially the music. The tracks this game has can be downright
oh, dude. I suppose it's natural that if you're gonna have majestic landscapes, you have to have amazing music to go along with it.
Haunting. Just the act of entering some new areas will stick with me a long time purely due to the music.
Jesus, I'm not gonna sleep tonight. Hi. Oh, it's a permanent health. Nice. Wait, what did that pop-up say? Full invertebrates crossbow bolts. Nunny? Is this some archery terminology that I'm just not familiar with? Oh, it's so calming. Damn. Bro, that would be the sort of scene that you would walk into, you'd hear the music going, you'd see the landscape, and you would just like sit there for a few minutes, just admiring everything around you. Granted, I never usually do that during streams because, well, it's a stream, right? But there are still moments in games that just make you stop and just appreciate the art that's happening. And if you don't have moments like that when you're playing games, well, maybe you're just playing a different kind of game. Like, you're not going to have those sort of moments in competitive games, that's for sure. But if you've never tried any of these more atmospheric games out before, yeah, give it a shot. You might enjoy it. Just stop and touch grass a little, you know? Virtually, of course. Doing that physically would harm you.
Relaxing, enchanting keyboards and vocals, then pulsing electronic club music.
Oh, hell yeah!
Now you might think that could be jarring, but the way the game paces that stuff out, it all fits together. There's a solid variety of tracks, and they all perfectly reflect the areas they were made for. As a bonus, the soundtrack is included with the game as well. Walking around, you'll hear layered sound of the wind through trees and grass, the overpowering rush of water. It's very rich and pleasant, but what's interesting is how harsh it can become. When you're out on a relatively normal hike, it's nice, but when things take a turn for the bad supernatural, sometimes the sound becomes electronically harsher and distorted.
Whoa. Are we dead? What's going on here? Exhumed the throwing axe. What is that creature? Some sort of spirit? What the hell is... Hi?
It's not restrained by pure realism and authenticity and makes the soundscape really fascinating at times.
What the... This game is horrific. For an indie project, the way this game makes you feel, from just the atmosphere, the environment, as well as the combat with different enemies that all look extremely unique. I really didn't know what to expect from this game, but this is very much a standout.
Putting all this together, the act of just walking around feels so ethereal and otherworldly. It's not all pure ambience candy either, since the combat sounds are also solid. The sling you start off with has unlimited ammo and is viable all game, which is good because landing a hit on this thing gives you a sickening crack. Sometimes it can be crunchy and low fidelity, but the sound feedback is always satisfying, and that's what matters. While the music was tailor-made for the levels, sometimes it plays with the soundscape in interesting ways. For example, there's one area where you need to cross through a bog. And while you're doing this, you're having to fight and push against your movement. There's a creature in the lake trying to serenade you to your doom, and sometimes its calls mix in with the music. It's not a one-time show either, and there are fun callbacks to it when you descend down into its lake. I've played dedicated underwater horror games that were less tense than this lake trip. Good God, the lake trip.
What the... Oh God, no! Not the Soma flashbacks! Although... well, I am watching this through a review, so I'm not really experiencing it like that. This might be more horrific than Soma. Soma was going for a different kind of horror. This is just straight up bad news bears, and I don't want to be anywhere near it. The fact that it makes you go down into the lake where you know that it resides in is such a phenomenal idea. In a way, it's like foreshadowing and a future event in story writing.
Again...
Gee, what the fuck? I didn't expect that to reach it all the way over into my... Oh God. I think I now know why I was recommended to check out this particular review. I do love horror, so this game is looking really, really good. It's so even more amazing that it's a solo developer.
It's a happy sad adventure.
Very.
There are some sounds that are off and not in a surreal way, more just a bad way. There aren't many, but they do stick out harder with how good everything else is. If I had to pick anything, I do wish the zipline didn't sound so harsh.
Oh yeah, that's
I find it harder to enjoy the scenery when it feels like I'm at the dentist's office. That said, those aren't remotely close to deal breakers. Northern Journey has some of the best atmosphere I've seen in a game, which is an insane accomplishment for a literal one-man band. Now at first glance, someone might think, oh,
did I hear that right? I got a bone to pick with you. Everything, and I mean everything, goes back to Marathon. Or I suppose in this case, Pathways into Darkness.
Oh, this is a walking sim. You know now that there's combat, and a lot of it. But when it comes to the actual walking, that was just something I was fine doing on my own. You can sprint, there is no stamina meter, and you can play this game in near Quake-like speeds. There's not fall damage, only falls that kill you. One time while testing this out, I accidentally impacted the village idiot, and my momentum sent him flying into the chasm. Plus, you do want to watch your step regularly, as one of the easiest ways to die is to lose your footing and fall down. This happens way more if you're tearing around like Sonic, but you'd be surprised at how often it can happen even when you're being careful. Sure, there are tons of creatures, but falling is the #1 hazard in this world.
Gotcha. Ooh. What was that? No!
As far as the game...
Oh god. Please don't remind me of that game. No more. Every single time Mandalore references it, I get a headache. Honestly, I'm glad that I experienced it, but I never want to relive it.
Gameplay itself goes, it's simple. You can carry multiple weapons on you, but can select 4 to quickly switch between. The only upgrades are little red vials that permanently upgrade your health by a tick, and orange vials that permanently increase your ammo capacity, and how many emergency health potions you can hold on you. The emergency potions are for use in a bind, otherwise you'll find health vials lying around. You quest for the items, fill out your map, and occasionally unlock shortcuts between previous areas. So it is a bit of a Metroidvania, but more about finding new ways to explore over new combat abilities. Occasionally you'll be blocked off by a wall that demands enemies' souls to cross, and they're not too rough. They're mainly a gate to make sure you've explored the area because it is very freeform. You might get a message from the flute player saying, "Don't miss this item, idiot." So the game can try to help you without being cruel, like if you need to backtrack a huge amount for an objective, you'll just be teleported right there. That rarely happens, but it always feels appropriate when it does. A lot of thought was put into keeping the exploring fun over tedious. It's already scary enough.
We've already seen many examples of that. But it's awesome how much thought was put into the exploration, not just from an aesthetic perspective, but also from a functional one. That is a very big concern whenever you have these larger, I guess, open world-ish, not really. But there are still places that you need to go that the game doesn't necessarily direct you towards or put you on a rail towards. So having some sort of system to make sure that you get the things that you need is very helpful. Lovely. I love everything about this situation right now.
So when it comes to exploring, the game excels. Upgrades might be out of the way or somewhere perilous, but not too obscure. These aren't Halo 2 skulls. It's the combat where things get tricky.
Halo 2.
You have a solid arsenal of weapons to switch between, and figuring out what to use for a situation is the key to the game. For most of the journey, combat is paced out well, and you have a steady supply of new weapons and enemies to keep things interesting. In these regular encounters, there can be a healthy amount of jank like enemies phasing through the ground or weird hitboxes, strange animations like bears doing flying spins at you. I don't mind these kinds of things in a game like this, but if you do, that's going to be a big hurdle. I usually didn't mind it because the way combat encounters are paced out and designed are so good. It's not constant, and you usually have time to think about how you approach a fight.
That's nice. The thing with those janky animations is I kind of already know what to expect going into the game. And as somebody who has tried to make a game before in the past, I know how hard it can be to get those things down right. But even without that information, I would just think it's charming.
But there are still some surprises that keep you on your toes. There are really fun combat set pieces like fighting the explosive troll brigade inside of a valley, or trying to desperately keep pace against a swarm. But while there are great gauntlets to run through, the spongier enemies, and especially the boss fights, can make the combat awkward. Most of your heavy-hitting weapons have slow reloads and don't gel well with these kinds of fights. The faster ones are more meant for swarms, and not very effective in these either. There is a difficulty slider that affects these fights in particular, but it's still not a perfect solution. It's not that the boss fights are horribly challenging or anything, it's just that the system itself doesn't seem meant for them. You're used to scoping out a fight
Gotcha.
or maybe being ambushed by multiplying ticks in the Swamp of Pain. Then when you find yourself fighting 50 of the Fjord's finest meth heads in the arena, that feels off. Some try to alleviate this effect by giving you a special weapon, like the sheep staff here. It fires bolts while the head slowly melts away. It's a better solution, but not every fight has one. The last stretch of the game especially feels not underdeveloped, but more changed out of obligation.
Are we in hell? What is going on there? I'm honestly not surprised that the combat system is not as great as people would like it to be. I think developing something like that is pretty difficult, especially if you're not building off of the basis of anything else. And honestly, with how ambitious this game is in its presentation, I'd be willing to give it a lot of leeway when it comes to that.
Playing normally, you sometimes find health and ammo as you slowly explore around. But the last bit of the game goes full retro FPS with items everywhere, a multiple stage boss fight, and an awkward game of keep away. Pure combat isn't the strength of the game, so Northern Journey banking on it for its climax just doesn't work for me. These are smaller parts in a much bigger picture, and the game has plenty of challenges that don't involve the combat at all. But these do stack up enough to make it feel more flawed by the end. These aren't fatal flaws, and I was still having a magical journey most of the way through. If you can tolerate that kind of jank, this is an absolute...
You took a bone from someone dead? Did I read that right? What are these silly pop-ups?
Easy recommend. I told friends about it, I bought people copies. It had been a while since I'd been this captivated by a game. It has satisfying exploration, a good amount of horror, and impeccable atmosphere. The polish is held back by a single guy doing all of this, but that's also the heart of it too. Northern Journey is an extremely cool game. If you enjoyed it, I would highly encourage you to leave a positive review for it on Steam or anywhere else it goes. That helps a ton with visibility, and this is the exact kind of game that deserves it. We need more games like this. Games with funny little goblins that I don't understand. That's really the key.
Dude, just how cool the idea for this game is, and also all these different elements being put in such a way that a lot of AAA games don't even get right. I can see why Mandalore would recommend it to everybody that he knows. This game just feels special.
What? Am I considering a Garten of Banban review? Well, it is the end piece of a Five Nights at Freddy's Human Centipede. I just can't tell if it's supposed to be a joke or not.
The hell?
Which hardware?
What? I've heard of that game before. I think a lot of horror YouTubers covered it, but I never watched any videos on it.
Where store did I work at? Well, fellow Blue Vest spotted the Genesis in the Duskers video, so it was a Lowe's. I think they still use Genesis, and it's terrible software. What's a good game to try completely blind? My top two answers are always Outer Wilds and 13 Sentinels Aegis.
Ooh, 13 Sentinels. I've heard really good things about that as well as Outer Wilds. Actually, for 13 Sentinels, I believe they were the same developers for Unicorn Overlord, and I really enjoyed that game, so I'd be willing to give it a shot. But an Outer Wilds playthrough will be coming to the channel. I think I'll actually do that as an offline Let's Play, however, considering that's a game that you really do not want to be spoiled on.
13 Sentinels might feel like I've pranked you in the first 2 hours or so, but stick with it. Do I consider Prey to be System Shock 3? Wow, that image had some timing. Anyways, I think like most people I wish they just got to call it Neuroshock, it probably would have done better. It's a very good game in that kind of genre, but I think it's missing too many elements to really be a System Shock for me. If you haven't played it though, don't let that stop you, it does a ton of great things. I do wish that some of the Mooncrash content could have been sprinkled into the main game later, like a patch, but what can you do? Anyways, that's all for now. Maybe we'll have something more story-heavy next time.
I should probably check out Prey then, if it's even anything remotely similar to System Shock, because the System Shock review was hilarious, with also some really awesome and cool ideas for the sci-fi genre.
Oh, come on.
Jesus, even underwater you can't escape the freaking spiders. But yeah, thank you for the recommendation. I certainly wasn't expecting this when I heard of this game called Northern Journey. I wonder if this developer worked on anything else apart from this game. I'd be interested to see what other projects that they have. But yeah, dudes, that's gonna be it from me today. Don't forget to leave your recommendations down in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.